Welcome to the Knowledge Base Ninjas podcast, where Gauri Ramkumar of Document 360 finds the best SaaS self-service knowledge bases in the world and then interviews their creators. Let's get started with today's episode.
Welcome to the Knowledge Base Ninjas podcast series. Our guest today is Nibu Thomas, Senior Manager, Information Development for Whatfix, a SaaS-based digital adoption platform which helps companies to create interactive walkthroughs that appear within web applications. So, hi Nibu, how are you?
Good, Gauri. Good to hear from you again.
Thank you. Thank you for joining us in this journey. So I'm going to start asking a few questions with you, and please feel free to share your thoughts and your information on the documentation.
Sure.
Great. So please share how you initially got into documentation.
Initially, like everybody else, it's by accident. No, so in India, as you know, it's not a real formal stream that people plan to get into. So if you ask any child studying in the school, you'll I think it's impossible to find somebody who says, I'm going to be a technical writer.
Mm-hmm.
So even now. So, but I always had the intent of writing. And I think even my name had a clue that I would be writing.
Very nice. Wow.
So
Great.
How I got into writing was before. I mean, I started my work experience working for a automobile company, Bosch. So we were into R&D, and I did a lot of work using my hands. And after working there for about 8 years, I decided I need to do something with my head as well.
Great.
So I took BRS and I got into a call center where I knew that they had opportunities for writing, but I had to get in, take calls, understand the product, and then show people that I could write. So what I did was I used to create newsletters. So we used the knowledge base, and I found that there was knowledge outside the knowledge base, and I used to capture that on my way back home, talking to senior consultants and getting fixes to certain issues that were not documented in the knowledge base. And I used to write it in a very fun and jovial manner that people used to be able to read through and understand and laugh at it as well. So then this aspect of my ability to write was noticed, and I got into knowledge management like that.
Fantastic.
And shortly I had my own team, and now I work for Whatfix, which is the digital adoption platform. Overall, I have about 23 years of experience.
Wow, that speaks a lot, Nibu. So you very rightly said there is when somebody tells me that I'm going to be a documentation or content creator, people think you're going to write some novels or books, right? So that's correct. So,
Yeah, that's.
So what was your documentation process, and who's involved in creating your documentation or the processes?
Yeah, so Whatfix again is a SaaS company. So we follow an agile methodology. It goes through an iterative process very quickly. We develop features. We get involved pretty early in the start. Even when it comes to the wireframe, we are involved because the interesting aspect here is we are the target audience for the kind of product that we deliver. So our inputs are used for even when it comes to design, and it goes through the process, and once we have some functionality, we look at it and create the documentation, and we get it tested, and then it is published. So it's a very iterative process.
Fantastic. Now, given your 23 years of experience creating documentation, what do you think are important factors when creating any kind of documentation for a SaaS business?
Yeah, not only for a SaaS business, but I think for any kind of documentation, there are some aspects that you need to consider. Um, the content needs to be contextual. Now, if you look at the product, even what you can do, what one user can do differs from what another user can do. Like, for example, you have admin users and you have regular users. What they can do in the product varies. So why should everybody get the same kind of help? So content should be contextual. It should not be a one size fits all. You have to somehow understand what the user already knows and then be able to deliver what, information so that he can bridge the gap. So we still aren't there. Actually, Whatfix is working on something like that. Imagine if you could ask questions to a user, and understand how much he knows,
Mm-hmm.
and then based on that information, you're able to match it to certain maps that can help him build up from where he is to where he should be when it comes to knowledge.
Right. Okay.
Then content should be findable. When you search for it, you should be able to get content. You should be able to understand what is the terminology, what is the language that the user puts into your search engine. And your article should be pretty close, or it should be something similar to what they would expect to see. So I think search plays a very important role when it comes to content.
Right.
I think content should be interactive because of the waning attention spans that humans have. Unless there is something that is happening, people don't want to read, and this is a observation or a fact that people don't like to read. So presenting information in huge pages together is not going to get the interest of the user.
Mm-hmm.
So it says, tell me and I'll forget, show me and I might remember, involve me and I will understand. So that should be our goal, right? When we create documentation, how much are we involving our users? Whether it's a SaaS documentation or documentation for a physical product, I think those fundamentals don't change. Then content should be relevant because of the amount of information that is being bombarded at us. It needs to be relevant. It must be just in time and just enough for us to consume, for it to be useful. Another thing when it comes to content is what I call as content affordance, or what does it look like? Does it look like something that I would want to read till the end, right? So very often we find that many tools are designed keeping in mind the content creation process, but we kind of overdo it. We focus so much on the content creation process that we forget about who the content is for. And like, for example, when we create content and keep translation in mind, we seem to use a lot of a very small vocabulary so that translation costs become less. But if you look at the impact, what is the impact of doing that? I mean, why do we have a large vocabulary? It is so that you continue to read. You feel like reading, right? But if it's a very small vocabulary, I think you need to consider what is the impact. Another thing that we do is we don't include screenshots for the same reason. Like, translation becomes very expensive, but screenshots facilitate scanning, right? Even if you don't understand the language, if you see where's the position of the buttons, you would be able to perform that task.
Yep, very sad. Yeah, that's true. Yeah. So I've been silently listening to all to this conversation, and I'm sure you will accept this. Documentation has been playing a major role in your customer service or success strategy, isn't it? So, and you also mentioned that your team gets involved right from the beginning of any product development stage. So, would you like to add more to this one? Like, how does your documentation take a big role in your customer success strategy?
So success depends on knowledge, right? So you can't just bring somebody from somebody who's working in another company and get them on board, and they cannot start performing with you without knowing how the product works, or what is important for the user, or what is the idea behind the product. So all of this is made possible using the help content that we create, right? So I think it's very important, and it plays a big role when it comes to support, even when it comes to call reduction and preempting issues, understanding where users could face a problem, and then creating content, or going one better upon that is giving feedback to the product itself, saying, okay, if you were to redesign the product in this manner, you may not even require content.
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah. Great. So, so have you noticed any kind of reduction in workload since introducing quality documentation?
Actually, we look for work. So one of the things that we do is to understand, our user, is we listen to sales calls. We listen to the salespeople interact with prospects and customers and understand what is the language that they're using, what are the questions that they ask when they don't know anything about the product, and we ensure that that information is covered, right? So we actually go in search of areas where we can contribute. So we're looking at increasing our work in that manner. But the impact down the line is, at some point of time, we would reach a place where we have sufficient content. We have content that will cover the 80% of the issues. So that's how it works.
Okay, great. So I think that takes me to the other next question as to, so have you seen a direct ROI since adopting a self-service knowledge base? I do understand this is something quite tricky and very difficult to measure, but if you have seen any ROI, how are you measuring it?
Yeah, this is a difficult one because when you talk about ROI, it has to come with measurements, right? So what kind of measurements does a knowledge base allow you to perform? And not only that, let's say it needs to be tied into something as well. Like, for example, your support team, right? What kind of calls are they getting, and how many times are they referring to an article? And is it because of that article that they were able to solve the content? And it's very difficult to make these connections. So unless we have something that could measure all of this, it's very difficult to actually put a metric in place. So we need something that can measure this and attribute it to a particular cause. So currently we don't have that, but that's something that I'm trying to push for.
Yeah, and as I said, this is one thing that is very difficult when it comes to documentation, because any other field, it's easy to measure the ROI. But yeah, I completely accept with you. So are you currently generating any organic search traffic from your knowledge base?
So by organic search, you're looking at what is Google throwing up when people search for your company. Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay. So even that is actually a little difficult to measure, Gauri. So what we do is one of the things that we are actually doing is we have implemented this document 360, and we have we have used the plugin to Zendesk, right? So when you use the plugin, and when there is a case that comes in, it actually throws up search results even before the agent can search for content, right? So we open the case, and then we look at what content is being thrown up even before the agent can search for content. what is the content that it is pulling up, right? And because our documentation is open to Google as well, so we can assume that the phrase that the user is using is probably something that they would use in Google as well. So that is some exercise that we are currently doing to see, if how complete our content is when it comes to user speak, member speak.
Okay, understand. Great. So I think that's taking me to the rapid fire round. So this is a rapid fire round, Nibu. So let's start. I have only 3 questions to ask. So who have you learned the most about documentation from in your career?
So I would say it's from the end user.
Great.
How they are using our content. Yeah.
Sorry. Great. Can you share a documentation related resource you have consumed recently?
So I'm a big fan of conferences. I recently attended the ASTC India conference that was held at Chennai. There was a lot of learning. I also presented on behalf of my company. It was a session called How to Create Content That is Intelligent.
Great. What is the one piece of documentation related advice you would give to your 20-year-old self?
I am 20.
Nice. Yeah.
Okay. Kidding apart. So I would say write less and improve the product. So I think what many writers do is they think that this job is writing. It's not writing. It is to improve the product. Okay? So to find out ways where you can write less. That should be your goal. Okay? If I knew this when I was 20, I would have written less.
So this is one of the lessons learned from your own experience then?
Yes.
Great. And I think at the end of the day, whatever you do it with passion, you get the best out of it, right?
Yes, I think finding passionate people and interacting with them really builds your knowledge and your value as well, because you are the sum total of the 5 people that you interact with continuously, right?
Yes. Yeah, correct. Super. Yeah. Thank you once again, Nibu, for your time and sharing your experience, your learnings through this knowledge-based Ninjas podcast series. I really appreciate the points that you shared with us, and I'm sure it's going to be of great value to the next set of people who wanted to pursue a career in documentation. Do you have any other advice or any suggestions or anything you want to share with us today?
No, I think it was great talking to you, Gauri. I hope I hope you get very interesting guests as well, and add. As we spread more information about this profession, it becomes something that people might aspire to become.
Great. Thank you, Nibu. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah.
You're welcome. Yep.
Thanks for listening to today's episode of the Knowledge-Based Ninjas podcast. Please head to iTunes, rate, and provide honest feedback on the podcast. See you next week.